So, this video is going to be a bit different because I quit my job. I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. And if this is the very first video you watch on this channel, welcome aboard. Have fun. It's fun here. I think it is. We'll find out. And if this isn't the first video, if this is the second, the third, the 17th, if you've watched 1,000 of my videos, and yes, I have 1,000 videos plus on this channel, thanks for being around on this journey, because it's a very interesting journey with a bit of a premature quitting of my job earlier than I had planned. This video will be timestamped. There are going to be the relevant sections, and this is going to be the first of 3 videos around this subject and the conversation tangentially related to my job, where I am now, how I got here, the nature of monetization on the channel, things like that. All these different side subjects that are happening sooner than I had planned. And I will also say, before we go further, that I do have a Patreon, a link down below, and while I'll talk about it more later in this video and later in other videos, because of the nature of the YouTubes where people don't always last the whole way through, I will say that I don't often do Patreon pushes past casually, laughingly, jokingly mentioning, like, oh, Patreon down below. But for the first time on this channel ever, in a more serious tone of voice, I have a Patreon link down below. And if you've appreciated the content that I have put out over the past 2.5 years, I would appreciate whatever you're able to do, whatever you're comfortable doing, in respect to the value you think you're getting from the channel or not. And that's fine. And there's no obligation. We'll talk about it more. I just want to throw that out. There'll be a link, okay? I'll throw a link in the timestamp somewhere, the timestamp showing, Patreon conversation. And it will be covered more in depth in another video we'll be doing next week. Let's start going through this. I quit my job last week, last Friday to be precise. My last day at work is going to be next Thursday, I want to say, although the truth is, based on when you're watching this, or when I think I'm putting this video on the channel, my last day of work is probably this Thursday. So I'm at work for another 5 days from when you see this, and then after that it's going to be the Jewish holiday of Passover, and then it's time for me to reset my schedule, to figure out the process I've had in place for the past 8 years, and 3 years before that at a different job. For 11 years now I've been in the workforce doing the whole thing and whatnot, and it's going to be time to try to figure out my own schedule. This video is going to ramble, just as a heads up. I always planned on quitting. I've been very clear with that on the channel in the past. I always planned on moving away from my day job. Always is the wrong terminology. For the past year, I've planned on quitting. The question was when. I thought I'd be at my job for 2, 3, 5 more years. Ultimately, it depended on when the YouTube channel got to a point where the combination of ad revenue, the combination of Patreon, the combination of it all, when it got to a point where I could pay the bills from YouTube, I planned on starting the slow exit from my job. Because I've loved what I'm doing the past 2 years, to the point that in no way, shape, or form am I going to be saying, hey, if you value the content and want to see it continue, if you could give. The content will continue, that's not a question. I like what I do way too much over here, and I've been having way too much fun talking about board games and making this whole conversation here a part of my daily routine. To the point that when I feel a little bit burnt out on everything else and all the other pressures, my instinct is to turn on the camera and talk to the camera. That is my form of relaxation. That's how much I enjoy what I do here. So this will continue one way or the other. It's the how it will continue and the other conversations around that. Those are all factors. But I will be here. For the foreseeable future, at least. I can't guarantee that I want to do this in 2 years, but I don't imagine things will change. I could be wrong. It's all a guessing game. So my goal was to quit regardless at some point, but I wanted to wait until things were more self-sufficient, until I could come over here and say, hey, I'm doing this full time and I love it, and no, requests for Patreon donations or anything like that. I'd rather have been fully self-sufficient, although channels are to a certain extent built on crowd support, and I do have an active Patreon that I'm incredibly thankful for on a regular basis, more so today than yesterday, but always thankful for. But I quit earlier than planned because the environment at work. The environment over the past year plus has been getting more and more toxic, and it's been getting more and more problematic, and I'm saying this with genuine appreciation and liking my boss. My boss is my friend in real life being outside this camera and this lens over here. My boss is my friend outside of work, and within work we have a different dynamic. And within work, not just him, but other factors at work have been getting more and more toxic to the point that I have felt that it is unhealthy for me and for several other people. Not necessarily everyone, but for several other people. And I felt that I had to step away both for my own peace of mind as well as to potentially and hopefully save other people's jobs. I don't know if things will change or not, but I know other people who are getting burnt out there and who will absolutely leave, and I think that they don't find themselves in a situation that I am fortunate enough to be in. A situation in which they have a budding career on the side that they love and enjoy that they can turn to. So for me, while I am walking into a financial shortfall, so to speak, it's not nearly as drastic, fortunately, as most people would have if they were quitting a job. Also, to be very clear, from this point forward, from the past 5 minutes, from everything else I say in this video and several other videos, remember that I quit. I was not fired, I quit. Take that into account before you choose to give anything. This is not like something that was thrust upon me. This is something that I chose. I chose based on circumstances, absolutely, but I chose, and you're not responsible for my choices. So factor that in as well. I appreciate what you give, and I would love what you give, but I want you to understand the terms under which you are giving. This is my problem, my channel, my career choices, and trust me when I say that I love the life I'm heading towards, and a little bit of stress is not the worst thing. People have it far, far worse than I do. I am incredibly thankful for the position I'm in, and I say that even as someone who is leaving a full-time income where I was frankly paid well. And so that's the background as to the why I quit. I'm not heavily going to go into it. I don't want to talk too negatively around the company. I've been there 8 years, and I am very appreciative for the time. I'm very appreciative for the opportunities, the years, the growth, the fact that the past year and a half have been on a downward trend are what they are, but I still have a great degree of appreciation for every other aspect. Coffee break. So what now? What's next for me? Well, first of all, there's going to be a period of readjustment. For me, just practically speaking, I mean, once I no longer get up and go to work every single day, there's going to be a major period of readjustment in my life as I try to figure out how to make sure I have a schedule. Because I want a schedule. I think schedules are important to actually ensure that you don't fall into this rote path of just getting up and whatever comes your way, comes your way. I work best on a schedule. I am efficient on a schedule, and I will schedule my game time. It's not like I won't have fun. I'll have fun. And I've been pushing myself very hard for the past 3 years, make no mistake. I mean, I have a family of 6. I've had a full day job. I've been putting out 11 videos a week on the channel for who knows how long. I have Board Game Co., the retail operation on the side. We'll talk about that as well. The relevant part that you should know now is that is nowhere near enough money to survive on, and we're actively trying to sell it. So we'll talk about that more. That will be one of the videos we have coming up, or part of the video coming up. And so I've been busy. And I'm looking forward to not pushing myself as hard as I have been, while also ensuring that I have a schedule and I adjust to that schedule. You know, wake up in the morning, have my coffee, and then maybe instead of going for work, I sit down on the couch and grab a rule book. Think of it the equivalent of your Sunday paper. This is my job now. This is what I'm doing, and so reading rules will be my job. Again, don't feel bad for me. This is I'm very appreciative of the situation I'm in. Make it very, very, very clear. And then from there, maybe I'll sit down, and maybe I'll have a daily legacy game that I actually finally start playing those legacy games and stop attacking others. Not attacking others, stop attacking the legacy games themselves. So, oh, another legacy campaign game I won't play. No, maybe I'll actually sit down and play them. Maybe that will be part of my daily schedule. Maybe I'll have more playthroughs on the channel. Maybe it'll be an offshoot side channel. Who really knows? Maybe there is one already. So I don't know exactly, but there's going to be that period of readjustment as I figure out how I want to move forward, and figuring out how I want to move forward is part of it as well. There's a financial aspect to that we'll touch upon in a minute, but there's also figuring out how I want to ensure that my current expenses versus my now currently dropped income work. And again, I have an income. My wife has a job. We have this YouTube channel and my Patreon right now. While there is a shortfall to be met, again, we are incredibly fortunate that I'm leaving a full-time job and walking into a shortfall as opposed to crippling worry and fear. So, it's fine there. As far as what's next for the channel, there's a few things coming up already, like I said already. There's this video, obviously, which hopefully you've made it this far into it. It's fairly big news, especially if you've been watching me for a while. I've been working my way towards her for a long time, and it is both incredibly exciting and a little bit daunting and nervous to be walking into it like this. I plan on walking into it a bit more planned. I always have been a bit more structured and planned, and this is less structured and planned. And so There's going to be a full video. Past this, there's going to be a full video, 2 full videos in the next 2 weeks. I don't know the exact schedule of when and how, but I'm going to have 2 full videos. First of all, I'm going to have a financial conversation around the nature of how this could be a full-time job for me. For others as well, but specifically around my situation. Everyone's situation is different. You'll have that 26-year-old guy, I don't have anyone in mind, I'm just saying 26-year-old guy who's off on his own, living in his own apartment with no family, no kids, no nothing, no whatever, and they can survive on $30,000 a year and it's fine. And therefore the YouTube, the way their algorithm has to work as far as making it work is very different than mine with a family of 6 and expenses piling up. Which is very different as well than something like the Dice Tower, which is supporting a whole network of people. There are different conversations around different people, and everyone's financial approach to how they want to handle things is going to be different. The video that I plan on doing some point in the next 2 weeks is going to be around my financial conversation, around how I want to handle things and move forward. And to be very clear, while we'll talk about it more in the video and not here, my goal is to still take little to no money from publishers, little to no with caveats. We'll talk about how I want to approach things. I have goals. I have specific ideas of how I want to balance that, because taking money from publishers to cover their games, I feel that would ruin this for me. I feel that would make it less fun for me. I already don't like being negative. Imagine how much less negative I'd like being if there was a paycheck attached to it. And so I don't want that. I'm not saying you can't take a paycheck and be negative. I don't want to. And so we'll talk about that. We'll have a full video around those conversations. My first and primary goal is always going to be to feed my family. But the way around that, the conversations of what I can do, of where there are lines that are crossed, where there are not lines that are crossed, how to effectively bridge that small gap, we're going to have a full conversation around the YouTube algorithms, the ads, the Patreon, all those things. There'll be a full video on that. There will also be a full video around my history to date. I don't know how far back it'll go, but something around a bit of a history of where I am, how I got here, what I've been doing, talking about different aspects, including, how I got into the hobby, talking about the nature of Board Game Co. and when that went from being a side little hustle in my basement to being a full-time business, and then from there that transitioned into YouTube, talking about the job I had along the way, the job that I finally left. Is going to be a bit of a history of me. No major reason, just in case you're interested. In case you're interested in the whys, the hows, I think now's a good time, because this is a fairly pivotal moment in the history of me. Which sounds so egotistical when I say it that way, I'm sorry. It's not my intent. So yeah, that'll be a second video. Again, sometime in the next 2 weeks. I don't know exactly how or when, but that's my goal. And then past that, I need to decide what I want to do for the channel. I need to decide, now that this is a full-time job, it's not as simple as simply walking away from a job and just playing games all day. There are things that I have pushed off. There are things I have said not yet because this is a part-time thing. Things that I want to start looking into. The irony of which is some of these things do cost money. We'll talk about that as well. But there are things like B-roll. I want to start doing B-roll in my videos. If I suddenly have a full-time job, I want that period of adjustment. Things are not going to change overnight. There's going to be a period of readjustment around this, but I would like to start going B-roll into my videos. I would like to start putting that extra effort into the content because I'll have the time to do so, and I like what it adds, which means I need to learn how to film B-roll. I need to get a camera for B-roll. Maybe one of the cameras I have works well. I don't know. I'd like to start adding a third angle in for anytime I do a review or a gameplay, so there's a little bit more dynamic to the shot. Why? Because it improves the quality of the content, and I will have the time to do so. Again, part of the problem with these things is these things potentially involve spending several $1,000s on equipment at a time when spending several $1,000s is the least likely of things that I want to do. I have to figure out the approach I want to take to that. Depends how well this little Patreon thing goes. And maybe I'll have to do a GoFundMe. Maybe I'll just have to dip into savings to take a risk and to take a gamble on myself and on the channel, but I do want to improve the quality of the content. Maybe I start exploring other platforms. For the past week and a half, those who follow me on Instagram may have noticed that my mostly previously dead Instagram channel, where I occasionally post things for like a week and a half and then stop, for the past week and a half, I've been regularly posting, partially because I've known this was coming and I've wanted to start branching out. And I don't want to dive into 14 platforms at once: Twitch, TikTok, Instagram, Reels, YouTube Shorts. I don't want to go too far, too fast. I want to pace myself and do things properly, to lock in that habit, to build up that schedule, post a day, post a day, post a day, figure out the tools you need, the scheduling, do all those things, and then slowly but surely, 3 months of Instagram posts later, when it's down to something I regularly do and is on my mind, at that point maybe we add something else. I don't know the monetization aspect of those. We'll talk about that in the monetization video. But I think it's important to spend this time treating this more like a job. If I'm going to treat it like a job, that means improving in every and all aspect I can. Improving the quality of the content, adding B-roll, adding more camera angles, throwing in games when I talk about the week in review and the news in the week in review. Maybe I find a way to nicely throw in a game that doesn't look not ideal, that looks well presented. There's so many different things I could do on the channel. There's so many different aspects and ways that I can improve the quality of the content. Ways that don't necessarily have a equitable return on their time. But if I'm treating this like a job, I want this to be as good as it possibly can be. So that's part of the next aspect. Which brings us to the financial part of the conversation. Which, again, I'm doing a full video. This is going to be a very short aspect of it. And this is the part where I probably threw that little Patreon timestamp in case you popped here from earlier. So, like I said already, there's going to be a full video on monetization. Full disclosures and everything. Not full disclosures. I mean, I'm not going to tell you every aspect of my finances, speaking frankly. And to quote Tom Vassell, that's none of your business. But I will be talking about it with a degree of transparency. Partially because while it is none of your business, if I'm asking you for support, if I'm relying on some degree of audience coverage for support, I don't mind sharing some degree of information. Not necessarily everything, but some degree of general awareness. Honestly, there are some degrees of things that are public anyway. So we'll talk about that. There'll be a full video there. But the short version, as I've referenced earlier in this video, is that there will be a gap for me. There's a gap between how much I need to actually pay the bills and how much I've just dropped to now that I've given up a full-time job. I'm fine, to be very clear. And this is my problem and not yours. At the same time, anything you're willing to give is tremendously appreciated. If you're willing to sign up as a $2 a month Patreon, as a $5 a month Patreon, whatever you're willing to do is tremendously appreciated. It is not your responsibility. It is not your problem. Please do so primarily and only if you feel you are getting value from what I put out on the channel equitable to what you're giving. This is my choice. This is my problem. This is not yours, and I'm incredibly privileged to be in the position I'm in where this can even be a conversation I'm considering, where I can even look down and say, I'm not looking for another job. This is the job I want. The fact that I can do that, the fact that I can be in that position is on me, and it's something I'm happy for. There's stress attached to it. There's trade-offs in life. Everything's full of trade-offs. I mean, the trade-off of having a full-time job is that the money's very comfortable. And I'm taking a huge pay cut to do this full time, make no mistake. But life is about trade-offs. Life is about making choices. And in this case, I'm choosing to do what I love over the degree of financial security I could otherwise have. My hope is that I can bridge that gap. My hope is that I can sit there and figure out what X, Y, and Z has to be done in order to bridge that gap. Ideally done so in a way that involves taking no money from publishers whatsoever. That would be my ideal. It's not a guarantee. We'll figure things out. This will be a process. I'm examining many conversations, and we'll talk about that more next week or 2 weeks from now, whenever that video goes up. But that's the financial aspect of things for right now. Thank you for being here. My first video went up, I want to say December 8th, 2019. That was my first YouTube video ever. Things have changed significantly in the past 2.5 years. I am very much looking forward to the next 2.5. I am very much looking forward to doing this for the rest of my life. Although everything's relative, you know. Rest of my life is a big sentence. But let's start with the next 10 years. And let's take it from there. Thank you to every single one of you who has been along for any degree of any portion and whatever capacity. If you have subscribed, if you have watched multiple videos, if you've clicked like, if you've commented, if you're a Patreon, if you're becoming a Patreon, any and all aspects of that have been part of why I'm able to sit here where I am right now and do what I'm about to do. And so I appreciate it. Thank you.